Hello everybody, this is Graeme, and today I'm going to be looking at a game called Emergency Force. Now the theme in this one is everyone takes on the role of a different emergency force, police, fire, and medical, and you're all competing to see who can save the most lives within the city. Now the city that you're going to be saving lives in is you're going to be building them based on tile placement. Now when I first saw this box, I can honestly say I wasn't overly excited to get it to the table, and then I saw the components, and well, let's just say they didn't alleviate my fears. Now, the gameplay basics are tile laying. You're going to draw a tile on your turn and place it, and then optionally place one of your tokens on it to show that you are going to be helping the people on that block. Now, you don't get your tokens back until the block is complete, which is kind of one of the key things of the game. So, although I was not excited by the look to get it played, I remember that some of my favorite games actually don't have the best table presence. So, will this one surprise me and outshine its appearance? Or will it just be as bland as the faces on this box cover? Anyway, let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and we'll come back with my final thoughts on Emergency Force.
Here's Emergency Force set up for 3 players. Each player has a set of 6 Emergency Force tokens, 2 of each type: police, medical, and fire. Players also get a helipad of their color, and a cube of their color is placed on the scoring track. All the tiles are stacked face down into piles. On a player's turn, they will draw one tile and place it. Each tile will have 3 regions: a road, a sidewalk, and a building. Tiles must be placed so that their regions connect to all other adjacent tiles. Ultimately, you'll be completing neighborhood blocks. There are 4 tiles in a square, a 6-tile rectangle, or an 8-tiled square. A tile cannot be placed if it would stop these neighborhoods from being formed, so 2 straights can never be placed beside each other. If a tile is placed, even if there is a gap that would be part of a valid neighborhood, it is considered to be part of that neighborhood. Once a tile has been placed, you can optionally place and score one of your Emergency Force tokens. They must be placed on the tile that was just placed, with the exception of the crash tiles, which I'll get into in a bit. You can only place an Emergency Force token if there is no other of the same type in that region of that block. So if there is already a fire token of any player in the building, you cannot place your fire token there. There can only be one of each type of emergency token in each region of each block. Some tokens scored when they're placed. Some score when the block is complete. The police will score 2 points for each police incident in the region that is placed after the police token is placed. The medical scores 1 point for each incident in the region when it is placed, and the fire does not score anything when placed. Once you've optionally placed your token, you see if the block is complete. When the block is complete, you score the Emergency Force tokens again. This time, the police scores just 1 point. The medical scores 1 point per medical incident in its region, and the fire will score 1 point per incident in its region, plus 1, 2, or 3 points for a small, medium, or large block. There is one special tile, which is the crashes tile. When placed, it is its own region. When there is a crash in a block, players can, instead of placing a token on the tile they just placed, place one of their Emergency Force tokens on the crash tile. There can only be one of each type on the crash tile. When the block is complete, you score the crash tile separately, and any tokens on the crash tile do not count towards any other scoring. If you have all 3 Emergency Force tokens on the crash, you score 6 points. If you have 2, you score 3 points and 1 point for one emergency token. The only other in-game scoring is when a large block is complete. Each Emergency Force token will score 1 point in addition to any other points awarded for that block. And speaking of large blocks, when a large block is complete, it opens up one more option on your turn. Instead of drawing and placing a tile, you can instead place your helipad in the middle of the completed large block, and you score 2 points for the placement. The game ends when the last tile is drawn and placed. The only extra scoring at the end of the game is for helipads. You score 2 points for each completed block that is adjacent to a large block with your helipad. Then, the player with the most points is the winner. Let's get back to see what I thought about Emergency Force.
On to theme and components. I like the theme in this one. It definitely makes sense to having a limited set of tokens that represent your workers to help the citizens of the city. Now, exactly why we're competing or why I shouldn't help you, your force, maybe a little disconnect, but the overall theme is definitely an approachable one. For the components, they really could be better. The tiles themselves are okay. It's relatively easy to determine what's the road, sidewalk, and building. I do wish they had moved some of the instance icons to the middle of the zones. I dislike that, for example, this one here for the police, it's kind of right on the line. I wish it was kind of fully within the road just to make it easier. Of course, the graphic is in the zone, but I do wish everything was kind of in that zone. The art on the tiles is definitely much nicer than the box cover. Now the rulebook, this could have used a little work, and sometimes it's just not clear. The player aids, these little cheap things, are very cheap looking, but they're functional. The cardboard components are inconsistent. My blue tokens are kind of two different shades. One is almost purple. So overall, not impressed with the entire package for the components. But of course, that could be mitigated somewhat by the gameplay. You know, if the gameplay is really good, it will hide some of the sins of the production. And you know what? This game is actually enjoyable. It really gives me that Carcassonne feel. And definitely that's not a bad thing. It definitely is its own game, but you can definitely see the inspiration that it got from Carcassonne with the tile placement and placing your tokens on there. I like that the different tokens score differently, and that really enhances the player interaction. You know, if I put my police token down early in a block and try to get the rewards, I want to get as many future police incidents in that zone to score the 2 points. Well, of course, the other players will make sure that doesn't happen. If I put a fire token down, again, you're going to make sure that that block doesn't have as many fires, and the block is going to be as small as possible. I also like the tokens do not come back until the block is complete. If I say, you know, I'm going to go for a large block, that can be many, many turns before it is complete. So that makes placing out your tokens kind of a good decision point to be made on your turn. The gameplay is nice and simple, and the turns are fairly quick. But I'm still engaged with the other people around the table are doing, because what they do on their turns will definitely influence what I'm going to be doing on my turn. For the most part, sometimes you're going to have a couple turns in a row where it's obvious what you're going to do, but quite often you're kind of looking, do I add this tile to their block so I can maybe steal some of those points, or do I try and make my own block? Now the game does have some gameplay issues. The block size really should be on this player aid. I don't know how many times I've had to remind people that the tile they were trying to place was violating the rules and would cause an unacceptable block size. I'm also not a huge fan of the helipad rule. If I finish off a large block, and in all the games I played, there was never like a huge abundance of them, there were only a few per game. The person to the left of the person that finishes the block will normally claim it with their helipad. I almost feel it should be the person who places the last tile has the option to also place their helipad if they wish. Most of the players I played with felt a little annoyed that they finished off the large block, and usually everyone got some points for it because almost everybody's going to have tokens in a large block, but then the next player got the helipad option and not them. You get no bonus for being the one that completes the large block. People found that a little annoying. But would I recommend this game? Yes, actually I would. The base gameplay is good and solid, resulting in an enjoyable game. I liked the approachable theme and the really ease of play. The game lasts a good amount of time, 30 to 45 minutes, and although I did prefer it at the higher player counts, my plays at 2 players were just as enjoyable. Now, most turns you have a good, but not too difficult decision to make. Where to place your tile, and do you tie up one of your tokens on that tile? And I did like that there was some player interaction during the first half of the game. You know, being able to control the size of the city block is definitely something you should be planning for. If someone's tied up all their tokens, you want to make that block as big as possible to make sure they're not going to get their tokens back. For the cons, it really comes down to just a few things. The components, for me, were definitely a slight negative. I think the rulebook could have used more work. And again, I'm still not sure about that helipad rule. I might try to switch up the rules to see whether it could be a bonus to the person who finishes off the block. And although I do like the player interaction during the first half of the game, or first maybe 3/4 of the game, I did find the last several rounds of the game I played were kind of anticlimactic. Quite often, you're just adding pieces somewhere on the board to make sure other players couldn't finish off their neighborhoods or blocks. So I feel the game arc was a little too stunted at the end. You kind of have a good arc and then it just kind of goes blop. But overall, though, I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10 on Dice Tower seal of approval, even with its few flaws. It ended up being a really nice, solid game that surprised me in a good way. If you enjoy tile laying games like Carcassonne, which are a bit lighter, this one might be one that you want to check out. But that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Hey, if you like this video, then maybe you'll also enjoy Board Game Breakfast, a show that we do every other Monday morning featuring a bunch of contributors from all over the place.
We also do Eye Catcher segment where we talk about something in the board gaming space that we found on the internet, and then also we do a top 10 list about all sorts of different topics, normally board game related or something weird, but then also we have a pick from the audience as the number one of our top 10.
We also like to take a flash from the past. We go through some old school games, so older games that don't get to be talked about very much. We pick one of those every week. And then archives, where we take an old Dice Tower video, we watch it, a little bit of it, discuss it, and just kind of see, hey, what was it like in the past?
And then we also take a look at a question from the mailbag, questions that you all send in through the Discord channel. We answer it and discuss it. So come check out Breakfast every other Monday.